You are listening to The Opposition View on the We Are West Ham podcast with me, Will Pugh, live from Athens. And in an odd quirk of fate, that I'm really, first of all, looking forward to West Ham's away leg at Olympiacos in the Europa League Group stage tomorrow night. I'm recording this on Wednesday afternoon, just past midday UK time. Delighted to say that I'm joined by Ari from the Gate 7 International podcast, huge Olympiacos fan. But weird quirk, I'm in Athens, just around the corner from the game. Ari, you find yourself dialing into me from halfway across the world in Baltimore. First of all, thanks for joining us. How on earth does that happen?
I'm definitely jealous, I'll say that much. I wish I could be there enjoying the match because it's going to be fun. Regardless of what happens, you're definitely in for a treat.
So give us a little bit of your backstory then. You're an Olympiacos fan through and through, but you're living over there on the east of the United States. We've spoken to some West Ham fans from all across the world. I was lucky enough to get out to Australia in the summer and meet the thousands of them that live out there. So how is it that you in the States and support a team thousands of miles away?
So it really started with my grandfather, or my papu, as we say in Greek. My family here were more baseball fans, we'll say. They weren't really big football or soccer fans, as we say in the United States. So the way that my grandfather connected with me through football was through Olympiacos. He's from the port of Piraeus. That's where he grew up. And he figured,
which is where I am right now.
Exactly.
I think that's about 2 minutes around the corner from me. Yeah.
So he figured, if he's going to be playing football, then, why not have him interested in a team that's Greek? And that's kind of where it all started. So he didn't really know what was going on. So I jumped into it full on 100%. And I fell in love with Olympiacos ever since.
Amazing stuff. Amazing podcast, Gate 7 International, going great guns by all accounts, with a couple of other lads, one of them a friend and colleague to meet up with later on in Athens tonight. Have a chat with him about the game, have a few beers, show me some of the tourist hot spots. Do you get over here much? Do you get it difficult if you still got family in Greece?
Yeah, usually I make it over just about every summer. Now, obviously, I have kids. It's a little bit more difficult. I didn't get to go this past summer because my wife had recently given birth to our second, but we were there the year before. I actually went to a game with Costa and a couple of my other co-hosts. So that was really fun. We saw the home opener against Pasianina. It was a really fun time. And actually my first time seeing a game in the stadium. I have been inside the stadium so many times when it's empty, but this was my first time actually seeing a game played in the stadium. So it was a really special occasion for me. But yes, I have plenty of family, as does my wife, that are in Greece still, and we see them all the time.
Amazing stuff. Look, the one thing you can clear up for me, first of all, because I think there's some confusion in England, certainly confusion for me. What is the correct way of spelling Olympiacos? Because there's some Y's, there's some I's, there's some K's, there's some C's that seem to creep in there. And even broadcasters in England don't seem to know. It seems to change year on year. So I want to know, what's the proper way to spell it? How do Olympiacos fans spell it?
So that is actually still a point of contention among Greeks as well. I know when we still get some messages sometimes when we post on social media, because we spell it, which is for me the accepted way to spell it in English is Olympiacos with a C. So that's how we usually spell it on socials. But we get so much sometimes from so much shtick from Greece, where they will say, no, it needs to have a K. Because in Greek, there's no C. There's nothing that translates to C. They have K. They have kappa. So they want us to put K. So it's still a debate to this day. But for me, it's Olympiacos.
All right. So you're using C's, but it's definitely a Y, isn't it? Rather than an I after the L.
That's correct. Yes.
All right, okay, cool. At least I've cleared something up. But look, Harry, there's. I want to talk to you about the game, players, lineups, all that sort of thing. One thing I must ask you, first of all, though, is, and a lot of the talk around this trip, I've made the trip out here on my own, meeting some fellow West Ham fans in and around the city over the next couple of days. We'll be going to the game with them. Very much looking forward to that. But there's been lots of talk about safety concerns on two fronts, really. Primarily, obviously, the scenes we all saw at the weekend in the derby with Panathinaikos, where the game was suspended at 1-1 after a Panathinaikos substitute, one car, got struck with a firework thrown from the crowd. And then also the fact that Panathinaikos are also at home on Thursday against Rennes in the Europa Conference League, just 3 or 4 hours after the West Ham Olympiacos game kicks off. I've seen a lot of, if you were that way inclined, you could be quite scared by a lot of the stuff you've read. I've felt perfectly safe here during the day since I arrived this morning, but obviously it's not quite game day yet. Reading lots about the police presence, and West Ham have got to meet at an agreed point 3 hours before the game and get taken into the stadium by a police escort. There's no other way of getting there. It's compulsory. Blah blah blah. Just talk to me a little bit about all of that and how you see all that.
So first, I'll start with why the police presence is there. So you may or may not be aware. I mean, it was global news, but there was an AEK fan when they played against, or it was in against Dinamo Zagreb in their qualifiers this summer. Yep. An AEK fan was killed due to fan violence. The Bad Blue Boys, the ultras of Dinamo Zagreb, came over. They started trashing the area around the stadium. AEK, fans who repeatedly patrolled the stadium. And that's one thing, maybe that's a lot different in Greece than in England. You would see, especially before this incident, there was no security in the way of police at the games. It was the ultras that are policing the stadium.
Right.
You're going there. They're the ones walking around. They're the ones making sure that nobody's doing anything stupid. So since this event with the Bad Blue Boys and the murder of Michalis, there's now a heavier police presence at these games, especially for international fixtures. So to start with, there's the context there. Now to Sunday, unfortunately, there's a lot of, not that it makes the gravity of the situation any less worse, I should say, but the one car was not hit with a firecracker. What happened was a firecracker went off about 10-15 meters away from him. He lost hearing in his one ear temporarily, which took him a little bit off balance. Firecrackers are still illegal. You can't bring them to the pitch, even in Greece, even though it happens all the time. But he had temporary hearing loss, which of course created a little bit of an imbalance for him, and which is what caused the whole scenario and then has brought the discussion forward. Now,
because many British news reports did say that he was struck by a firework.
Yes, we were chatting with a couple of different news sources, correcting them on that information. Again, not that it makes the act any less,
quite, but still bad for the player and scary.
Exactly. But I will say this: it's different. It's a different situation when you're playing in Europe. You're not going to see as many of the flares, the firecrackers, because of the European bans that can occur. So that doesn't happen for the European games. But when it comes to Greece, it's a different animal. It's the Wild West here when it comes to the derbies, especially.
Yeah. So I mean, from what do you make of that? That a lot has been made of it. Again, in British reports, of the fact that Panathinaikos and Olympiacos are playing at home on the same day. Obviously, you don't want to see games getting abandoned, but am I correct in saying that it was solely because of that incident where the player was in danger rather than any violence between the fans? That incident we saw. But what do you make of that? Is it as bad as it's being made out that the two teams are playing at home on the same night? Because there was talk initially of one of the games being moved. They're playing Rennes, of course, who, to be honest, I have been involved in some incidents in France, fans of theirs before. What do you make of that? Do you think it's being blown out of proportion, or do you think it's a bit of a bold move or perhaps stupid move from UEFA to keep them both on the same night?
I think I definitely understand the concern, especially 2 games in Athens on the same night. I don't think I recall something like that ever happening, at least in the last 10, 15 years. I can't recall another situation like that. Definitely would spread the police presence pretty thin. I know the games are at different times,
Yeah.
but in reality, because the areas where everything is going to be happen are kind of spread apart. I mean, it's still pretty close, but I don't foresee any issues, like
What we
overlap
talking?
between fans.
What we took, because I was going to ask you that, like geographically, if West Ham and Chelsea, for example, played at home on the same night, wouldn't matter, opposite sides of London. If Charlton and Tottenham play at home, north and south of London, completely different. You know, London teams play, but again, Arsenal and Tottenham, they try and avoid that wherever possible. I think always, almost. And the same sort of thing, really. Do you know, Manchester City and Manchester United rarely play at home on the same day.
Right.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? I just is it one of you mentioned geographically? I obviously know where the Olympiacos stadium is. I went past it earlier, and it's quite funny. I've already texted some family at home. I'm saying it looked intimidating midday on a Tuesday. Midday on a Wednesday. Let alone what it's going to look like at sort of 5 o'clock, an hour or so before the game tomorrow. But yeah, is it you sort of suggested there that perhaps it's not quite as of a big a deal as is being made out because geographical reasons?
Yeah, it's not that it's not, like, you can definitely cover the distance via public transportation to get from one stadium to another, but it's not like it's that fast. And I don't know, at least for me, it was because my family has a place near where Panathinaikos stadium is. We have an apartment that's nearby, and I can tell you, like, going from Olympiacos stadium to get back, it's not like a fun trip. It's, even though distance wise, if you're just looking at the kilometers, it's not super far, but like getting there, it's not super. I would be really surprised if there's overlap between fans and any kind of violence on that. On a normal day, if it were a normal Super League game, maybe, but not for this. I think everyone's going to be a little bit too preoccupied, personally.
So there won't be any sort of fallout or bitter feeling as far as you're concerned from the incident and the game being called off at the weekend?
Oh, well, it depends what you mean by bitter feeling.
Just
physical,
enough
physical bitter feelings, or
enough to spark something between fans, I guess.
I don't think that would be the case today because there hasn't been any decisions, and I don't think we're going to get a decision. The earliest we would get a decision is probably Friday. When we get a decision in the courts related to what happens, then I'd say there's probably, more, but not now. Nothing's happening.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, look, Ari, I can already tell, obviously, as we try and be on our podcast, we try and be objective about our own club and our own fans where it's important. And I made, Costas, who is your co-host, when I was texting him about making this trip. And I did say, I'm thinking of coming on my own, safety-wise. What does that mean for me? Where should I be staying? That sort of stuff. And I think it's fair to say, I don't think he'll mind me saying this. Initially, I think he was a little bit, not perhaps defensive. And he just said, just remember that at the final in Fiorentina, the Europa Conference League final, which West Ham, of course, won in Prague, the reason that we had an away fan ban was because lots of our supporters were launching plastic beer cups at the Fiorentina players, one of which hit their captain and drew blood. And we got a 2-game away fan ban. One of those is suspended. So we've already served that away at Freiburg. What... Again, I think lots of this sort of European ultra stuff gets a bit sensationalized in Britain. And I've been fortunate enough to go to lots of the West Ham European away games over the past few seasons. And the only time really there's been any trouble was bizarrely in Seville, where some Eintracht Frankfurt fans, made a small scale attack, completely unprovoked. West Ham fans just in there enjoying themselves because they were playing Real Betis the same night as West Ham played Seville, the night before, but there was West Ham fans already. But other than that, it's genuinely, West Ham fans particularly have just been enjoying themselves the whole time. But this is the first game, I'll be honest, where I have thought, oh, there's a bit more in this than usual. And perhaps that's because we get some more stories around Greek football fan violence. There's a bit more of an ultra culture. I guess I'm right. So what I'm basically asking you is any of that true? You know, from your point of view and as an insider and someone who's got their eye on Olympiacos particularly and Greek football as a whole, is there much in that? You know, the fan violence stuff. Is there more of a reason for West Ham fans out here, including myself, I guess, to be a little bit more alert and be a little bit more nervous and aware than perhaps we have done or have had to be previously?
I'll start by saying this because you brought up Frankfurt fans. So far, the Frankfurt Ultras are one of the worst, at least from our experience. My co-hosts went to the Frankfurt game when Olympiacos played Frankfurt, and Olympiacos fans were getting jumped out of the metro by Frankfurt Ultras on the way there. They are a stage worse. They are legit mafia and hooligans and criminals. Gate 7, the Ultras, as they're called for Olympiacos, you're not going to so much be bothered unless the fans are causing. If they're causing a problem, they 100% will step in. You'll have some people that are stepping in. And if it gets rowdy, then I would expect that. But if you're there enjoying the game outside, maybe some banter here and there, I doubt anybody's going to bother you. But if the fans are getting rowdy, it wouldn't surprise me in any way, shape, or form to see some of our fans jumping in.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, as I've mentioned already, West Ham fans are required to go to a certain meeting point 3 hours away. 3 hours before kickoff time, I believe. There's compulsory coaches. You have to go and meet there and get coached in on these things. So it seems like a pretty tight-knit security operation. Will be kept in after the game for at least half an hour, I'm sure, as well. So it certainly seems like the police are sort of on the ball, and there's preparations in place already. Look, Harry, let's talk about the football as well. I'll be honest, when this draw was made, the league draw, the Europa group stage draw, I was delighted Olympiacos came out, a huge name in European football, iconic, often played in the Champions League. They've had big ties at home and away. Group stage game United have played out here. I was thrilled when the draw was made because it's still such a novelty, even though we're on our third year on the spin of playing in Europe. It's such a novelty to be able to watch West Ham play in Europe, that the opportunity to come to Athens, the first time I've ever been here in my life, and watch West Ham play Olympiacos was for me just an opportunity I couldn't miss. So I'm absolutely delighted that I get to be here. How do Olympiacos fans view this competition? They're first in the Greek Super League at the moment, which, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't unusual. People, I think, would consider, outside of Greece anyway, that Olympiacos are the biggest team in Greece. How do Olympiacos fans view the Europa League, and how seriously are they taking this game against West Ham in the competition this season?
So it's important that we look at some of the context surrounding our season to answer that question. So last season was, by Olympiacos standards, a disaster. We went through 4 coaches, and we didn't win the league. And usually, even when we're at our worst, especially in the last few years, we still win the league by a considerable margin.
Right.
So it was really bad last year. We went through an entire rebuild over the summer. I mean, we cleaned house. I think approximately 30 players left, whether it was loans or sales. A lot of players came in, new sporting director, new coach, and a lot of other backroom office positions have been changed out as well. So it was really big. And this, as far as this season goes, we're playing much better football. We still have a lot of kinks to work out, but right now we are playing like the best team in Greece. It's between us and Panathinaikos, which is also why that derby was so big. In Europe, though, we're very disappointed because we're coming out right now of our first 2 games with 1 point, and we should have 6. We were the better team in both of those matches against Freiburg as well.
Lost 3-2 at home to Freiburg.
Correct. We lost 3-2, and the first two goals were gifts. I mean, we absolutely gifted them. Nicolas Freire, who's been a very contentious player since he arrived from Mexico, playing for Punas UNAM, and he just gave the ball, literally just gifted the ball to the attacker on the press, gifted it to him. They scored. And horrible. And then Panos Retsos, who's our other center back, gives up a really, really, really amateur penalty to give them a second goal. And we had more opportunities. I mean, the XG situation, if you took away the penalty and you took away the gift, I mean, it was at one point we were like, it was 1.2 to 0.2 against Freiburg. So it's horrible. I mean, you look in the entire Europa League, we have one of the least expected goals allowed, the least XGA, 2.24. But we've conceded 5 goals. That should tell you something.
Yeah.
It's really poor. Center back is a position where we're struggling with right now. We're hoping we make it to the winter just to see things out, but it's been a disappointing European season. We were hoping to have the 6 points at this point because we knew West Ham was an uphill battle. You know, your club is over 4.5 times the value of our club. Your roster is worth probably 3 to 4 times our roster. We know that the caliber of players is a completely different animal. We wanted this to be like, okay, we don't need to get the points here because we've got the 6 we needed. But now we're under the gun and we have to go for something.
Yeah, you played Bacca Topola in the other game. That was away, obviously. You've only played one home game. The West Ham game's your second. That was a 2-2 draw. West Ham, you know, I mean, they sort of, it's fair to say, made light work of Bacca Topola. They obviously went 1-0 up. That was a mistake from Angelo Ogbonna. Then we won 3-1. Right. And the game against Freiburg, we played really well. We deserved that victory, limited them to a 10, 15-minute spell. Other than that, we dominated and deserved that win. I think I was certainly surprised to see Olympiacos certainly only draw at home with Bacca Topola after that surprise Freiburg game. What's the thoughts at the moment? Is the Europa League now the priority among fans and the manager?
So that would depend who you ask. Given the fact that we didn't win the title last season and we are going through a rebuild, most people would say, look, we got to win the league this year. Whatever happens in Europe happens in Europe. I am one of the ones where in a normal season, winning the league is more or less a given. Yeah. That's especially in modern Olympiacos history, that is a given. It's not as special to us. So we want something in Europe. And I can tell you this season, you know, the football we're playing, we are the best team in Greece with the football we're playing. I mean, we lead the Greek league in pretty much every metric you can think of. Fewest goals conceded, most goals, most opportunities, you name it, most touches in the final third, most touches in the penalty area, you name it, we're at the top of it. It's in Europe where we want to get our pedigree back because we really haven't done much in Europe for quite a few years, ever since Pedro Martins' second season when we lost to the Wolves in the round of 16 of Europa League. And that was during the COVID season where we not had the interruption, we beat Wolves. We definitely beat Wolves, and we go on to probably the quarterfinals. And, you know, we lost to Arsenal in the round of 16 a couple seasons ago, but ever since then, it's just been downhill. So it really depends who you ask. I think the minimum for us is we want to win the league this year to go back to being the dominant force in Greece. But for people like me, I also want to see us do something in Europe. I at least want to see us make it out of the group stage, even if it means going into conference. Perhaps that wouldn't be as bad as many make it out to be. I would want us to get out of that at the very least. Is that fair? Maybe it's not. This is a 2-year project at minimum based on what Diego Martinez and Antonio Cordon, our sporting director, have to do. But for us, we do want to see some victories in Europe.
So we'll move on to players quickly in a short while, Ari. I just want to get your thoughts very quickly first on the owner. Of course, the owner of Nottingham Forest, Evangelos Marinakis, and he's been he's probably most well known, I think, in England for the vast amount of transfers he made within one. I think it was something about 34 in a year period or something, in and around Nottingham Forest's promotion to the Premier League. It seemed they sort of, Steve Cooper, good manager, kept him in the league somehow, and they seem to have sort of found their feet a little bit more. And I don't think anyone's really backing them to go down this season. But talk to me a little bit about what he's like as a character. He's an Olympiacos boy originally, and I understand that in Greece his reputation is sort of similarly crazy and wild to what it is in the UK.
I think in Greece it's probably even a little bit more crazy. So because there's things that he can do in Greece that he definitely cannot do in the UK. He's definitely a lot more outspoken in Greece, but not just him. That's all the owners. I mean, here, the football, the Super League it's pretty much. I don't know how to explain it. You could pretty much equate it to like Andy Cohen Bravo TV series drama between the billionaires. That's really what it is in the end. The culture and the environment also around Greece is a lot different than the UK.
Sure.
Marinaki has always been in England, at least, a little bit different, maybe a little bit more hands-off than he is in Greece. And I know that there was talk last season, maybe him being a little bit too involved in transfers when they first got promoted, but then he kind of took a step back. Steve Cooper, I will tell you, if this were Greece and Olympiacos with Steve Cooper last season, he gets fired. He doesn't stay on as long as he did.
He gave him a new contract, didn't he, Marinakis?
Yes.
Just like in the middle of when he was sort of, which people appreciated. Everyone backed that, I think, to show support for him. It seemed to back the players up.
Yes, and for me, that was the right decision. But in Greece, when you're in the bubble of Greece, patience does not exist in the same way it does in England.
Sure.
I mean, this is a league where we call it the coaching carousel. It is not unusual for half the teams to have changed coaches by the mid-year break, or sometimes within a couple months. We've already had, I believe, 3 teams already change their managers in the Super League. So it's a different animal. It's the Wild West here in football terms. So he's definitely, but I do think that he has taken some lessons from his ownership in England, in Nottingham Forest, and applied that here, because this is really the first year we have never really seen him, at least since Pedro Martins came in to coach, how much trust and how much leeway he is giving to the sporting director and the coach to run things here. It is their show. That doesn't happen in Greece at Olympiacos. That doesn't happen at all. So you have to believe that he's taking a lesson maybe from England when he's doing that.
Yeah, I see. Look, it's sort of just another interesting backstory, really. Talk to me a little bit. Look, we'll talk about the game now. I think it's vital for Olympiacos to win. You're sat on 1 point, as you mentioned. West Ham, I would say, all but qualify. If that puts us on 9 points, you'll still be on 1. Unlikely Bacca Topola beat Freiburg, to be quite honest with you, but I think West Ham sitting on 9 points then makes it all but impossible for them to go out. Even if we were to lose our next 3 games, which I think is unlikely. So yeah, it's a massive game for me and for the club, really. I think David Moyes will approach in that way. But just talk to me first of all, sort of about some of the players. Just having a quick look through the Olympiacos squad before we come on. And there's sort of 3 names really that stand out to me, which I'd argue is probably less than perhaps would have been historically. There's normally 1 or 2, maybe former Premier League players that maybe even a few more well-known faces. You got Daniel Podence, of course, formerly of Wolves, and then just on the bench, noticed as well Stevan Jovetic and João Carvalho used to play for Nottingham Forest. Are sort of the names that leap out at me. Who are we sort of looking at star player wise for your team?
So the big name that you've glossed over there actually has nothing to do with the Premier League. He's a Greek boy through and through, and I think, he of course he spent some time in Germany, but Kostas Fortounis is going to be really the impetus of a lot of our attacks this season. And he is this year he's really started off. He's a different animal. A lot of our dangerous opportunities will come from him.
Right.
We've already seen it in almost
he's
every
a left
game
winger,
this
right?
season. Technically, he's a 10, but he's been playing on the wing. It's been like that for a couple seasons now. Most of the fans want to see him back behind the striker where he belongs, but because we're in a situation again this season where we pretty much have like 3-4 10s in the team, you got to move people where you got to move, and he's very effective. He's a set piece master as well. A lot of our most dangerous plays, our most dangerous possessions this season come off the back of Kostas Fortounis. Even if he's not the one playing the assist or the hockey assist, he's the one helping spur the build up. He's a very talented player, and by far, he is the most important piece in the attack in that respect. Daniel Podence, since returning to Olympiacos, has hit the ground running. He's still a great player, one of the best progressive attackers not just in the Greek league, but on our team, whether it's passing the ball into the final third or carrying it in the final third. He's another one of those impetus, can hold the ball very well, connects very well with Kostas Fortounis and Rodinei, our right back, who's been a revelation this season for us. Podence's seven goal contributions in 6 appearances so far. Technically, he has an assist against Panathinaikos, but that doesn't count yet. But that's a whole different story altogether.
Yeah, sure.
So between Costa, Daniel, Podence, and Rodinei, our right back, the most of our attacks come from the right side. And a lot of that is because of Rodinei. He is a freight train. Once he gets moving, you cannot stop him.
Right.
Fast, very strong, a lot of volume into
He's
the,
your right
the
back,
penalty area.
Yes.
Yes. Brazilian right back.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So I mean, just sort of how you expecting Olympiacos to set up? Then it looks like a 4-2-3-1 in your last game.
Yes.
Is that pretty standard with that? And then how do you expect it to play out style wise, then as well as the formation?
How do I expect? So based on what we see, we always start the games pretty strong. So I'm not going to be surprised, especially because we're home. You're going to see a very intense press. It'll look kind of like when the pressing is happening, kind of like a 4-2-4. So you're going to see our wider players really getting forward with the striker and whoever's sitting behind the striker, and it's going to be early on an all-out press. It will drop off repeatedly. The second half is where we definitely struggle. We'll start off very strong, but then the adjustments have not been great this season. So you'll see us kind of taper off, maybe pick up in the middle third of the second half. But I do expect a pretty high press, a pretty intense press, although it's probably not something I would do.
No, yeah, fair enough. I think, to be honest, that tends to suit West Ham a little bit. We struggle more against teams who sit off of us a little bit. We're always more than happy for the opposition to have the ball. And I think although a win will all but seal our qualification, like I mentioned, I think David Moyes, particularly the start we've had so far, will be happy with a draw from this game, really. I don't necessarily think they'll approach it in that fashion, but I think it will be more conservative than less so. But if you're likely to push on, especially given that you need to win the game, really, I think that might end up playing into West Ham's hands. Listen, Ari, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on the We Are West Ham podcast. It does seem a little bit odd that I'm sat in Athens and you're over there in Baltimore, but you clearly know your stuff. And quite a nice little sort of thing about your granddad living and being brought up just around the corner from where I'm sat now. I really, really can't wait for this game tomorrow night. West Ham away at Olympiacos. I mean, what a fixture that is for so many West Ham fans watching and listening. That I don't think the novelty, we've seen our team play Sevilla and Lyon and Eintracht Frankfurt in the past couple of seasons. Fiorentina, of course, in the Europa League final. And I don't think it's really worn off yet, to be quite honest, for lots of fans, the fact that it's our team playing these fixtures. It certainly hasn't. For me, so I'm absolutely chomping at the bit to get to game day and get into the stadium, which promises to be an amazing atmosphere as well. Harry, before we let you go, what is the score going to be Thursday night? West Ham away at Olympiacos in the Europa League group stage.
2-1 Olympiacos loss.
2-1 Olympiacos loss. Goodness me, not filled with confidence at all. We rarely get opposition teams come on and back West Ham to win. You know what? I would take that now, obviously, with the points. But I just hope, as I sort of always feel with away games, I hope I get to celebrate a West Ham goal. And we come away with a decentish result, which I think a point is a decent result at this stage. I can't see us just whitewashing the group completely again. I reckon you'll come at it. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw in that game tomorrow night. It's a bit of an early kickoff as well, but promises to be an absolutely amazing game. Harry from Gate 7 International Podcast there, huge Olympiacos fan, beaming in live from Baltimore. Thanks so much. We hope you enjoy the game from wherever you're watching it. We hope you've enjoyed this opposition view on the We Are West Ham podcast. I've been Will Pugh. I'm out in Athens. You'll have some more content from me over the next few days, and we'll of course have the Everton opposition view later on this week. Thanks for listening, everyone. West Ham are massive. Come on, you Irons, bring on Olympiacos tomorrow night, and we'll see you next time.